All right, John, let's get to our guy, Les Bowen, who's joining us now here on Birds 365. Les, welcome to the show, man. Happy Football Friday to you. 2 days out from an NFC title game in
Indeed.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yes. How is everybody?
Good to see you, Les. Third in 8 years. I'm going to say it right off the bat. And by the way, the Eagles won 38-7, I believe, and 31-7 in the 2018 and 2023 NFC Championship games. I think this is their easiest one. Now, but while I say that, I don't expect that kind of blowout because you never expect that kind of blowout against a good team at this point. But I look at this and I'm not shying away. I'm not a shrinking violet. They're the better team. They're the more talented team. Just don't beat yourself.
Well, there you put your finger on it pretty well. You know, they left at least a dozen points on the field and had Matthew Stafford, a flick of the wrist away from ending their season last Sunday for no good reason whatsoever. That bothers me, but you're right. I mean, if you just look at the rosters, I don't think there's a lot of areas where Washington has an edge. Washington's offensive line isn't great, and their best offensive lineman, Sam Cosmi, went down in the last game. So, they're going to have a backup against Jalen Carter. Unless Jaden Daniels just totally, performs magic, I just don't see how they lose unless they turn the ball over a bunch and do stupid stuff, like you said.
Les, what's your general thoughts on Jalen Hurts coming into this game? Obviously, he's a dual threat, quarterback who thrives with the running game. If that's taken away, how do you think that changes the offense this week? And what do you think Kellen Moore will have to do differently to adjust to that? Or maybe it's not a threat. Maybe it's not a problem at all. Maybe Jalen's out there and he takes his painkillers and he's ready to go. I don't know.
I would hope that second scenario is the one because they have struggled when Jalen's been limited in the past. I do think you can throw against the Commanders. You can get the ball to A.J. Brown, who's kind of been a forgotten man in this postseason. If you have to win it that way, I don't see a problem. It is we saw in the last game against the Commanders, you take the running quarterback out of the equation and suddenly they can load up against Saquon Barkley. And that was pretty effective for them. I don't know if that'll be the case this week or not. The Eagles you don't want to be in that situation unless you have to. I mean, if they can get anything out of Jalen Hurts without re-injuring himself or something, I think they'll do it. I don't think they'll craft a game plan where there's not any threat of the quarterback running. But it's a concern. The fact that he was a full practice participant yesterday, makes me think that he's not going to be limping around out there. But if he gets hit a couple times, who knows, really?
Yeah, I it's one of the things, unless you know better than most. So many guys are banged up this time of year. You just talked about AJ. AJ's not 100%. So many of these guys are not 100% fighting through something. And, too many people kind of assume, all right, they're out there, they're good to go. But those limitations can show up pretty quickly. So we're just going to have to wait and see when it comes to Jalen Hurts. This Cam Jurgens injury, though,
that's
this one, because a couple reasons. On Wednesday, the Eagles signed a 32-year-old offensive lineman to the practice squad on January, 20, whatever it was. I'm like, that's not normal. No. So that was the first red flag. I'm like, why are they bringing in Cam Irving, who has played center in the past?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, here we go. Cam Jurgens isn't practicing. He's got a back injury. All of a sudden, you had that weird Nick Sirianni. They'll be there at practice, playing semantic games. But he's not going to practice. And by the way, he wasn't even there, Les. So he wasn't there.
He wasn't practice. There. Yeah.
And Landon Dickerson has taken the first team reps in individual.
Yeah, that surprised me just a little bit because John, we've talked about this, how Jeff Stoutland doesn't like to change two positions on the offensive line. He would much rather just have a guy step in from the bench rather than shuffle guys around. And Dickerson was the original. Well, he wasn't the original, but before Juergens,
third heir apparent.
Yeah, but I was going to say you have to go back to like Suomalo to get the original, I guess. But one of the reasons why they drafted Landon Dickerson was to be Jason Kelsey's replacement.
Yes,
it turned out they thought he'd be better at guard. They ended up drafting another Jason Kelsey replacement in Juergens. But it makes sense to me that you would plug Dickerson in there. But it is a departure for Stoutland to.
Yeah.
He's got to have Tyler Steen now at guard. I think that'll work, but
I'm much more concerned about left guard than I am at center. Like I don't worry about Landon at all at center,
right?
But I'm much more worried about that downgrade from Landon to Tyler Steen at left guard. But as you kind of pointed out, Les, Washington loses their best offensive lineman, who would probably be the sixth best in Philadelphia, to be honest.
Yeah.
So you have to persevere through those kinds of things. Now, Landon talked yesterday, and I don't know if you saw it, but he said, there's clips where he's talking about he expects Cam to play.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they put up a clip and then they don't put the context. And then he said, ask Nick, ask the trainers. I'm not a medical guy after that. So
it's hard to know. I did see that. I mean, these guys talk with one another, and I would imagine he has some idea of whether Juergens is going to be able to play, but it's always possible that he doesn't. I mean, it's always possible that he's just kind of throwing that out there, thinking, "Well, I would play if it were me."
He would play, by the way.
I don't know what their relationship is. I don't know.
They're good friends. I
figured they were. They all dress in that one little row there. But I don't know if he knows something or if he doesn't know something. It's I've seen it go both ways in those situations where the teammate said something like that and the guy was fine. And the teammate said something like that, and it was totally off, the guy, he didn't really know the situation. So I don't know. But I did see that, and I puzzled over it. If Juergens does play, I hope he doesn't play unless he's really himself. Because, a back injury it affects you don't have any power, if you're really messed up in the back. Him going out there with a back injury, it's not something you shoot up like a finger or an ankle or something.
And especially for an offensive lineman. I mean, you go back to Sean Andrews, who was a great player, and then all of a sudden he started having back issues, and it could be Tim Jernigan on the defensive line. Remember, he hurt his back lifting. Boy, he must have missed close to a year at the one point.
He had to have surgery on his. But I just hope that if Juergens does play, that he's able to really be himself, and not because Washington's got a decent front. They have some guys that can.
Jonathan Allen's back. He's he missed most of the season with a partially torn pec, I guess.
Yes.
But he's back and he's generating some significant pressure, at least in the first two playoff games. So they have some good players. And let's start with their best player, Jaden Daniels. You ever seen a rookie like this?
Not really. I don't remember that much about Mahomes' rookie season.
Oh, he didn't play.
He was on the bench.
That's right. He was on the bench. His first season as a starter.
I
guess I should have
pretty good,
but he was on the bench. So that makes it it's not the same comparison, No, I haven't really seen anything quite like it. I know it's real easy with a rookie quarterback or a quarterback who's just starting for the first time to get way out in front of yourself. And, we've seen it a million times. We saw it here with Carson Wentz and a little bit with Hurts the Super Bowl year. Teams will adjust to what Jaden Daniels does, but
it's not coming until the off season. There's only so much you can do right now.
Right. So I think he's tremendous. I think I followed him a little bit at LSU. I thought he was tremendous in college. I was not surprised that he was good. I didn't expect him to be this good right away, but that's a factor this weekend. Not just him, but the whole thing with Washington. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Dan Snyder's out of there. There's a franchise quarterback, a new coach. I think there's a lot of confidence and euphoria around the team that can really, it won't make it easier to block Jalen Carter, but it's going to be, there's a lot of mojo there. There's a lot of, they have an intangible. I think that's pretty significant. And I wouldn't discard it. They went into Detroit and won. And in the aftermath, we all kind of said, oh, Detroit's got so many defensive injuries, no wonder. But I don't think anybody was saying that before the game.
Yeah.
We all knew about the injuries, but Detroit had persevered through that and won every.
They gave up, 9 points to the 14-win Vikings the week before or whatever.
Yeah. And I was tremendously impressed. Now, I was tremendously unimpressed with Dan Campbell and the whole the Lions process in making some of their decisions with trick plays and crazy crap. But
putting and Ben Johnson gets $15 million to put his season in the hands of Jameson Williams. Yeah, I don't want Jameson Williams strong, great player, but I don't want him throwing the ball when I need a drive scoring. I gotta score in that situation. I'm with you. But here's what I like about Washington, Les. And this is what I didn't like about the Rams last week. If you're going into a hostile environment and you're facing a more talented team, you're going to have to be aggressive to win. Some things are going to have to go your way. And you're going to have to make some plays and make your own luck. And he's been so aggressive on fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worked for him. He's got this dual threat. You can imagine. All right, what do you do on 4th and 2 against Washington? They got a quarterback who can run it, he can throw it, he can do this, all this. It makes it very difficult. The Eagles were able to do it with Zach Bowen in the first game. They stopped him on a key 4th down. But it's very, very difficult. It's been very successful. The one thing I will say about Washington is they're coming to win this game. They will try. Yeah. They're not going to kick field goals like Sean McVay and say, even if it was snowing, it's cold, it's snowing, let's take the points. Let's flip the field.
Yeah.
They're going to make the Eagles play 4 downs to stop.
And the weather's not going to bother them. They come from the same weather. They practice in the same weather the Eagles do.
Yeah.
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 It's, I have a lot of respect for what Washington has done. And I think the Eagles should win, but I'm not sure it's going to be easy. And the Eagles need to – I just want to see – I've written a couple things this week, and I've gotten some criticism for being – not really negative, but in pointing out frustrations that I have with this team.
I think they're fair. I've been seeing your Twitter, Les. I've seen them.
I just want to see this offense work the way it should with the personnel that it has. People were bringing up to me after last weekend and the passing stats that the Eagles put up. Well, Josh Allen only threw for 127 yards. Who are Josh Allen's
I hate that. I hate that conflation.
Yeah, well, who are Josh Allen's receivers? Is his offensive line as good as the Eagles' offensive line? Was he playing a better defense? Yes, he was. There's no excuse for the Eagles having to struggle like this in the passing game. There's just no reason for it. I'm sure you guys have talked about this, but
we've been talking about it. Well, you and I, we've been talking on this show.
What is
quite
the
a bit.
reason for this? What possible reason could there be for?
Well, Les, let me ask you this, because it's this is where I am mentally. Where I agree with everything you're saying so much to the point it almost agitates me, because I'm like, we're 16-3 and 8 quarters away from winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm watching it and I'm like, this is constipated with 2 top 10 wide receivers. It doesn't make sense at all. So I'm trying to figure out how to balance. We just keep winning. The Eagles just keep winning games. But man, it could look way prettier.
And it could be so much easier. Like I said, they were, and I dwelled on this a little bit because I didn't think a lot of the media did. They were on the very brink of disaster.
I brought it up multiple times, Les. If Jalen Carter saved the season,
yes,
the Eagles defensive back slipped behind that pass rush, and if Stafford had time to throw, I don't know if the receiver would have gotten in the end zone, but he would have gotten down to the 1 or 2.
Yeah.
At the worst case scenario, if CJ came up and really laid a good hit, and then you got 45 seconds or so to punch it in, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But you're that close, that close to where everybody's complaining about what you're saying. So I don't think your criticism is warranted.
That would have been one of the top 5 disasters in the history of Philadelphia sports, right there. The 64 Phillies, the 2002 Rondé Barber playoff game. I mean, you could have ranked them right up there. I mean, to be ahead by 13 points with 3-something left in the game, and had they lost, but people just don't want to.
Winning cures everything.
Within 24 hours, it was all about Saquon Barkley and the snow, and wasn't it beautiful?
They're selling the snow for $50 a pint. Did you get your pint of snow?
I did not. I missed out on that. But God bless Eagles fans. That's really cool that they're doing that. But I that's kind of what I'm saying here is that even though the Eagles are better than Washington, I mean, they just keep leaving themselves vulnerable.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, your old colleague Jeff McClain came out with his latest podcast, and I've been talking about this all year, and Jeff, I'll read what his tweet. Kellen Moore was hired to rescue Jalen Hurts in an offense, specifically the passing game, that was stale, but the scheme hasn't looked like the Eagles' OC's previous offenses.
Right?
Why? And then, the little tease for the podcast. And he's got an A.J. Brown quote, which is, "We do know we're winning, obviously, and that's the main goal. But if we can correct these things, that would be great, because if you don't fix it, it's going to show." Well, there's only 8 quarters left. They might go
an awful lot of games at this point.
Yes. So, I mean, this is it. It's not changing. But my question to you is, this offense, Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, and now Kellen Moore, mechanically looks the same. There's different success levels. Obviously, everybody will point to Shane. But if you look at those games, it looks the same for the large part.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's obvious. They're building an offense around the quarterback and what he's comfortable with.
But why is he – the thing that nobody can answer is, why would the quarterback be comfortable with extremely difficult throws that take a long time to develop? What is the –
Well, I think he's uncomfortable with getting the football out quickly. I don't think it's comfortable versus – I think it's what he's uncomfortable with.
But do you have to, at some point, sort of pan back and look at that whole situation and the coordinators they've had and the problems they've had and sit him down and say, look, in order for us to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to be comfortable with getting the ball out quickly. Does that ever enter the equation? I mean, it isn't.
Well, I got to tell you, Les, the entire offseason, that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's what they were trying to do. And if you look at the first 4 games, they were trying to evolve it. And by the way, I'm not sure, because I think they were too quick to pull the plug, to be honest, because if you look at those first 4 games, yes, they were turning it over too much, but AJ wasn't there for 3 of those games.
Yeah.
If you look at the last game against Tampa, the week 4, they didn't have AJ, they didn't have Devontae or Lane. So I thought they pulled the plug too quickly.
Yeah.
But they've lost 1 game. They keep winning, they keep winning, they keep winning.
John, you were there earlier this week. I thought Nick, who never says anything, said something really interesting, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but he pretty much said, as long as Jalen doesn't turn it over, we win.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are 9-0 this year.
Well, I've
And
said
that's really true, but that doesn't mean your offense is functioning the way it
No.
should. It just means, hey, as long as he
Well,
keeps the ball,
you hit the nail on the head, Les. They feel that if they don't turn it over, they're going to win. So they become so risk averse on offense.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue with them because again, they're 8 quarters away.
Yeah.
But to your point, I wish more people could recognize what you recognize, that I always talk about. The goal here is to increase the margin of error. Like, you shouldn't have been in a position where the Rams could have stolen that game.
God, no. If you don't take the safety and you kick the 2 extra points, you're not in that position.
Yeah.
You've got a 10-point lead, instead of a 6-point lead with Matthew Stafford driving down the field.
Yeah. And Jake missing kicks.
Things.
Yeah. I mean, Jake missing kicks is that's not, he's got to make the kicks, but
that's extra points. I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
Maybe you can miss an extra point, but multiple extra points? No, he's missed 3 in 2 games.
I wonder if they're going to just start going for 2. I mean, if you make one of them, you make up for the 2 misses you might have.
That's right. That was Chip Kelly's when they first came up with where they changed where they put the ball for 2-point conversion. Chip Kelly's was thinking out loud, if you go for it every time, you only have to make half of them.
Right.
Have the same number of points.
Yeah.
And he didn't ever do that, but it was an interesting thought exercise anyway. But
and when your kicker can't hit a point after, it makes it more enticing.
And that the safety kind of crystallized some of my problems with Kellen Moore. So they had first down on the 2, right? They ran the ball up the middle with Saquon for 4 yards. 2nd and 6 from the 6. They had him drop back into the end zone right after suffering a knee injury. Why? What was the need for that? What was the
I'm with you. I said, because Zander's been on that as well, and I agree. I would have ran the football, because they weren't effective throwing.
Roll him out, do something, 3-step drop. Injured. You don't need to have him wander all the way back into the end zone. God.
But here's where I'll say this is what frustrates me, Les, because you have this whole group of people that you can't criticize the quarterback. His passer rating's over 100. Not turning the football over.
Well, he does do some things well. I mean, it's not like
he does a ton. Try to put he does a ton of things well. But the point is, everybody trusts Jalen Hurts. Well, if you trust the quarterback, you should be able to drop him back in that situation if you want to. And Dallas Goedert was open over the middle.
Yeah,
there's got to get rid of the football.
There's definitely that, yes. But
I'm with you.
Part of that situation was the knee injury had just occurred.
Yeah, I would have ran it. I
wouldn't physically trust him in that situation. That was just a disaster. They didn't get a block up front.
Well, also at the end of the game when they ran it for Saquon and they were trying to run out the clock at that point.
Which they're usually very good at, and they just totally screwed that up.
Kellen Moore decided to run a bootleg on a bum knee, and Jalen had an 8-yard sack. I'm like, what are you doing? You need 10 yards to win this game.
I think somebody said they used up 14 seconds on that possession.
Yeah, and all you needed was really one first down to make the Rams basically have no chance.
So these are the things that really give you pause, but they do have, the Eagles have the best roster left in the playoffs.
I agree.
Even Kansas City, I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes, but Kansas City doesn't have the Eagles receivers. Kansas City doesn't have the Eagles offensive line. And Buffalo, the team that if the Eagles win this week, I would love to see Buffalo in the Super Bowl because A, it's a great story. B, Buffalo's not that good.
No,
Buffalo, a guy had to drop a 2-point conversion for them to, not have to go to overtime last week against the Ravens. Buffalo's a lot like the Eagles in some ways, frankly.
I'm with you. The Eagles are the most talented team left.
But that also is almost something that gives me concern, Les, because in 22, who was the better roster in the Super Bowl, the Eagles or the Chiefs, in your opinion?
Probably the Eagles, yeah.
And then they had Patrick Mahomes, who was the great equalizer at quarterback. And I think coming into these last couple of playoff games, not as a knock on Jalen, but I think what they've asked him to be this year is every team we're going to face for the rest of these only 2 teams is going to have an advantage at quarterback, and that could be a great equalizer in any game.
The big difference this year is the Eagles' defense is so much better. The Eagles' defense in 2022 had all these stats, but we knew, we'd seen they played a very easy schedule, and we kind of knew that anytime they saw a good quarterback, they struggled, which has not been the case so much this year. I think they're better off in that, but I don't want to see a team that's won 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls in the that's an advantage. That's really an advantage to have so many guys that have been there and done it, on your team. That almost outweighs the Eagles roster advantage to me. But Buffalo, I think the Eagles would have a good time playing Buffalo. I think that, I wouldn't say they kill them, but I think they're on very even ground with Buffalo. But they have to win this week first, obviously.
At Les Bowen, make sure you follow Les on the X platform. Read him at PHLY_sports. Don't criticize him. He's making perfect sense.
That's okay. They can criticize.
No, they can criticize. I love your take on Joe Witt, by the way, and all this about running backs don't have extra. Quarterbacks are running backs when they leave the pocket. There's no. You're supposed to hit them, all of them. Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels is Washington's leading rusher, by the way.
Yes.
So you really want to put that out there about how quarterbacks don't.
Now that I'll disagree with you only from the standpoint of he got asked a question. He's answering the question.
Yeah, I know.
How I would have answered it, Les, is I would have said exactly that. Well, quarterbacks lose that extra protection when they lose the pocket and become a runner. So we're going to hit them like a running back. I would have tried to educate people.
Yeah.
But
until he slides, I would have said until he slides.
Yes.
Which he didn't.
But anybody, technically, a running back can slide. He has that same protection, but a running back never would. Quarterbacks are trying to protect themselves. Receivers can slide in the open field, give themselves up. They do it all the time at the end of games.
True.
There is no extra protect. I think a lot of fans don't understand that.
Right.
When the quarterback leaves the pocket, there is no extra protection. There isn't. Now with Patrick Mahomes, superstars, they give them that deference, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And the sideline gets trickier when it's a quarterback because you see a guy trying to make a hit on the sideline, and that's a little.
Well, and by the way, I give Patrick Mahomes credit for that. If he's savvy enough to realize, hey, I'm going to stay in bounds and you push me and I'm going to get 15 yards, Godspeed. I think that's a savvy play. Prediction time, Les. Who's going to win it? NFC Championship. We're all going to New Orleans, aren't we?
Yeah. I'd like the Eagles. I think there'll be some points scored this week. I'll be a little bit surprised if it's a low-scoring game. I would say 32-27 Eagles. The Eagles haven't shown the ability to pull away from anybody, really, in these playoffs. So it'll be a nice surprise if they do, but I'm not counting on it.
Good stuff. We appreciate you joining in. What's that, John? Go ahead.
32 points is impressive for this.
Yeah, I think they can score 32. They've scored 33 in the last game and lost with Kenny Pickett most of the game. So
Have they? I guess only one other time this year they've topped 33, and that was the opener.
I have to look, but that's probably
that was a shootout against Green Bay.
I think they put up 34 in that game.
Yeah.
Interesting. Les, thanks for joining in, man. We appreciate it. Make sure you guys go and catch up with Les Bowen, one of the best in the business. We appreciate you joining today, brother. And hopefully we talk to you again before a Super Bowl here for the Birds.
That'd be great. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Les. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
There's Les Bowen joining us on Birds 365. Great stuff. Love talking to Les. You know, John, I like a guy who can come in and have an opinion that differs from everybody else, even when everybody's clamoring you're wrong. I love that about Les.
Yeah, well, Les wasn't wrong in that particular issue.
No, he was not. But everybody's telling him he is.
We brought it up on this show multiple times, but they, I don't know what to tell you. They were 13 yards away from stealing the game, and Jalen Carter saved the season.
Yeah,
and
you heard that. I mean, he said he would have put it in one of the all-time collapses of Philly.
Oh, it would have been a disaster.
It would have been a disaster.
I mean, can you imagine doing this show on the day after Matthew Stafford?
Man.
If that play is a touchdown, I mean, yeah, the same people telling Les he's wrong would be losing their ever-loving minds and just complaining about the offense and the passing game and Kellen Moore and this and that and this. And the Eagles have been trying to, as Jeff has pointed out in his podcast, we've been talking about it all year for the most part. This is not out of whole cloth, and that's why I like when other people do it, and Jeff's doing it on his podcast.
Right.
This shit has been talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks. Not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera at the NovaCare complex.
Good stuff, John. We got a few super chats, then we'll get our predictions. What is on the agenda for the Philadelphia Eagles today, Johnny Mac?
They just changed the schedule. I don't have my phone next to me. 12:10, Nick Sirianni. I think 12:40 is practice, and then locker room after that. Quick practice today. So, but key to see if Cam Jurgens. I expect Dallas Goedert to practice. I'm not sure about Cam Jurgens.
We'll see about that. And maybe we'll do a practice report tonight if I don't have Cilio again. I got a fair. The fires are raging out there again, John, and they're right by Big.
Well, it's championship, but I got radio at 3:00, 5:00, 6:25. So we got to figure it out in between.
All right, we'll figure it out. I'll text you about that. We'll handle that business off the air. Let's read a couple super chats, then we'll get our predictions in here. Devin Parker checks in. What's up, Devin? Appreciate it. I live in the DMV. I'm a UPS driver that enters a building full of Commanders fans. Today, the madness began. I will be unbearable if we win this game. The hog is going down. Fly, Eagles, fly. I love it, Devin. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for your support. And that sucks that you live in the DMV area. But maybe
those people have been down for a long time. I mean, they have a right.
They have come back strong. We've been taking over their stadium for how many years, and now they're
they have a right to be excited. But I think you're going to be in good shape.
No doubt about it. Brian Pumper says, I'm loving this Jalen Hurts roast session. Close your ears, Jalenites. Keep cooking.
Well, I don't even think it's a roast. I constantly point at the things he does well. But there's so much he does. I always use the term relentless to describe him. But I mean, anybody who looks at this offense and says the passing game isn't an issue is lying to themselves. And they want to blame everybody but the quarterback. And it's been like at some point you blame Nick Sirianni. All right, you didn't blame Shane Steichen. You did blame Shane Steichen the first year. You didn't blame him the second year because they won at a high level. And Jalen played at a runner-up MVP level. Brian Johnson and now Kellen Moore. I mean, at what point do you look in your mirror and say it's all these people's fault, but it's not this guy's fault? You're lying to yourself. Look at what Brian Johnson's doing. And by the way, Jalen Hurts loves Brian Johnson. And Jalen Hurts, the guy working with him during that second year of Shane Steichen, during all those first years of the Nick Sirianni era, the guy working with him the most on a day-to-day basis was Brian Johnson. And now he's in Washington with Jaden Daniels, and he's having the best work. And not even in the back of your mind, you say, hey, maybe Brian Johnson wasn't the problem.
People don't like to talk about that, John. Nate the God says, J Mac Izzle. I love when he calls you that. J Mac Izzle. You always talk about margin of error. What's Washington margin of error versus the Eagles and the Bills versus KC?
Washington's margin of error is very small because they're the lesser talented team. They're on the road. They have to do a bunch of, as I pointed out, they have to be aggressive. They have to make their own breaks. They have to. You can't sit back. You can't settle for points. You can't flip the field. You gotta seize any moment you have to try to pull off the upset. Buffalo against Kansas City. Well, Kansas City plays. It's very similar to the Eagles, really, if you think about it. They play in a fashion where generally they're going to keep you in the game. So, and then they rely on the defense and pressure to close things out generally late. Patrick Mahomes to make a few big plays to put the somewhat limited offense over the top. So the very nature of the way the Chiefs play usually keeps the opponent in the game, at least somewhat. So, Buffalo's mentality is to keep it close in the fourth quarter and go make a play. So, I think Buffalo's got a chance for the upset, but I have to lean on Kansas City until somebody beats them.
Yeah,
Be the man. Ric Flair rules apply. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yep. D. Hughes says, just win, baby. Fly Eagles fly. Appreciate it, D. Hughes. Brian Garner says, coming in late again. A lot of people forget that along with CJ being thrown out, Reed went out with an injury, so both starters were out. That's true. Different game here, though, man. NFC title game. I'm not,
Now,
Reed
was in on the final play, so he might have left for a little bit, but Reed
he came back.
I forget if he would, but he was definitely in on the final play because Zach Bond was carrying the receiver into the end zone in front of Reed Blankenship. Zach probably should have sunk a little bit more. I remember specifically talking about this with Vic. So Reed was definitely on the touchdown with 6 seconds left. And Zach Bond didn't sink quite enough. And Jaden Daniels was able to make the touchdown to Jamison Crowder, I believe, caught the winning touchdown.
Yep, that's what it was. Johnny Mac, prediction time, brother. Who do you got? What is your final prediction and thoughts here on this Football Friday of Birds 365?
The Eagles get third championship game again in 8 years, 38-7, 31-7, and those two teams were more talented than this one. So I don't like the spot for Washington. Now, you never expect blowouts like that. A lot of things have to happen. First game, it was the Chris Long play, as I like to call it. Completely stole the soul from the Vikings. And part of that had to do with the crowd and the environment. And Jonathan Gannon would talk about that. He was an assistant coach with the Vikings. When he came here, he was like, man, that completely devastated that team. And then San Francisco obviously was the Hassan Reddick game, completely wrecked the game, and turned into a very talented team in San Francisco, as you saw the next year. But they didn't have their quarterback. He had no arm when he came back. Obviously had to have UCL surgery after the game, completely legal hit. He also, people forget, he also knocked out Josh Johnson, who's a disastrous backup quarterback anyway. But anyway, that was the Hassan Reddick game. This team's less talented than both of those teams, the Washington Commanders. Now, I don't think things are good. Things have to break a very specific way to get blowouts like that. Probably not going to happen 3-for-3, but I do think the Eagles are the better team, and they're going to win the game 27-22.
27.
But maybe it's a late touchdown by Washington that gets it closer. I don't think it's going to be Matthew Stafford's got a chance to win the game with a minute left.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. I have, for my score prediction on this one, I have 26-23, and I think we win it on a field goal at the end. I think this
Jake
game
Elliott. Hey, by the way, and we were talking about Jake with Les. Jake's had his worst season since 2020. Still better than Washington's kicker. They're on their third kicker. So
the light's going crazy over there. I'll let you run here in a second. 26-23, I have Johnny Mac. I think we win it in the last second. I don't think anything about this game is going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't think it's going to look pretty. I think it's going to look like an Eagles game has all year long, and I think they're going to win it at the end. One super chat. AJ says, does the Philly Jalen disrespect stop when we win Sunday? I'll say no. No.
I don't think anybody disrespects Jalen.
I know. I tried to tell people that yesterday. Nobody's out to get the Eagles. People are making shows. They talk about everybody. I mean,
I don't think anybody disrespects Jalen Hurts.
All right, we got to be respectful of John and let him go. I know he's got stuff to do. John, good stuff today, man. Good 27-22 was John's final prediction. We appreciate you doing it today, brother. We will talk to you maybe tonight, if not on the pregame show on Sunday. All right, brother?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, Matt. Good stuff there from John McMullen.